Hello, Fred.
Hello, Kristen. How are you
You're
today?
back.
Yes, it's been a week hiatus. Yeah, I think we were looking to do
Maybe
something.
longer. I think we
Has
we
it
skipped
been?
last week.
Oh, yeah, we definitely skipped last week. Yeah, we both were planning on doing stuff on that Friday, and we were connected, and we're just like, I ain't feeling it. And you're like, I'm not feeling it either. We're not ready for this. So, I
No,
guess maybe it was the whole Black Friday energy, what was coming out.
I totally forgot. You're right. And it really maybe the Black Friday energy is what added to a lot of the purging I saw experienced by the collective this week.
Yeah.
I felt so many people were purging. I know I was. I've seen it in my family. We were just letting go of a lot.
And it's just that term, Black Friday, because usually when people, hear that Black or the Dark Friday kind of thing, they're
Yeah,
going to equate not necessarily negative things or nefarious things associated with that, but there is usually a connotation between dark and light, and so it's
absolutely.
always fascinating when just how certain words may trigger, or they're going to trigger everyone differently, or bring something up unconsciously differently when they hear certain terms, especially just the insanity that we see during Black Friday. It's like such a lack mentality. It's like everything's on sale and it's one day out of the year that you can go and buy all this stuff. And then it comes down to is like, why do we feel that we need all of this extra stuff, in order for us to feel that we're satisfied?
It's so true because I don't go shopping, in these past few years on Black Friday, but I did when my kids were really young. And I remember each year it would be earlier and earlier that we could get out. Like it would be like midnight. I'd be like, I think we can get to some stores now,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think it just didn't even like shut down. I think went through the night,
Yep.
But what
People
is the
camping.
lack and what is the rush to get there? And I remember when there was a big toy or something and it was like limited, but how far is that from our truth?
Yeah. And I
See
think
that.
the bigger part too is about that darkness side, the difference between the dark and the light. Most
Yeah.
people, when they think about spiritual healing, especially historically, when I say like within this lifetime of what we or how we perceive, spiritual healing, whether it's crystals, pyramids, meditation, oming, whatever you want to talk about, most people always think about it as a light energy, a loving energy. It's like we need to
Yes.
focus on the love. We need to focus on the love. And the challenge that I have seen with this for sure is when you're just focusing on half of your existence, you're creating more imbalance, even if it is more love than fear. So, what we really learn when we get into this, if you really want to find healing and balancing in your life, that fear, dark shadow side is where the light needs to be directed to create the
Mm.
balance. It's not just focusing on love, 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 love. Energetically, that's no different than a person just living an incredibly fearful existence. And when I say fear, I always, break it down. Everything can be viewed as love or fear. Especially if you look at the emotional guidance scale from like Esther Hicks. So fear isn't always a phobia like spiders or snakes or whatever, clowns, whatever your fears
Yeah.
are. I just use the term fear as a neutral or a general experience of something that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I love how you can, when you have more awareness, you can dive deep into that fear and find gratitude. I think for me, what really stands out is being a mom to three teenagers. There's moments where
God
I
bless them.
cannot, yes, I cannot control whatever it is they're doing, right? And they're teenagers, so they're in that experimental phase, and I may not agree at all with what they're doing, but how can I go into that moment and find deep gratitude for the journey or the contrast? And so I don't know if that makes sense with where you're heading, but like, how can we
It's perfect.
dive into our own shadow, given that example? Of that feels like a shadow to us that we don't want to go down that dark alley, but that's exactly where the light needs to be.
Yeah, and we're not encouraging people to go out to, consciously create their fears just to experience them. That's what
Right.
ayahuasca will do for you.
Yes.
which is why a lot of people gravitate to that. They think, oh, this is going to be this beautiful spiritual experience, and next thing you know, their freaking head's in the toilet, and for an extended period of time, and they have these visions that are not usually beautiful and light, and they're just going to come out of it. They can have great healing from it because they're really diving into that shadow side. And to
Absolutely.
me, that's what a lot of these things are designed to do. So a lot of spiritual practices will take you into that shadow side, and that's where the sweet spot is. That's where we're going to find the most healing, so to speak. Because to me, the biggest because a lot of people want to talk about their purpose on Earth. Keep it simple, and then the details can be endless. Is the biggest to me the simplicity of what we're here for is to find love in the face of fear.
Mm.
Because when you can see both sides of the coin, then we truly have a choice. But
Yes.
if we don't understand what that language of love is as it relates to, fill in the blank of whatever you're experiencing, it's going to be a challenge. We're going to be running in cycles and circles and thinking that we just need more love, 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 but sometimes people will focus on the love and light all the time, which to me is a distraction that they don't want to go into their shadow side. Possibly, not everyone, of course. There's no
Hmm.
hard rule on this planet, at least not to that extent. But to me, keep it simple. We're here to find love in the face of fear.
Yeah, and that can be anything that you have triggering you, that feels raw, tethering you to a need to control. Anyone that's been in a narcissistic relationship and they can actually stand with that person now and love the experience that apparently they had to move through to heal their own inner wounds. These are just some of the ways that are coming to mind that gratitude is truly the bridge. Just anchor in gratitude that whatever is coming up has a purpose. And how can you soften
Yep.
through whatever it is that's hurting you? Because the hurt is only an illusion. It's a thought construct based on a belief you have that you need to be experiencing a different feeling. But
Yeah.
if you can just learn to love the whole experience for what it is, you will immediately notice the softening.
Yeah, we don't want to judge the fear. That's
No.
what a lot of people tend to do is they judge the fear and then they don't really want to look at it the deeper. And control is the biggest mechanism that we have that we play out in our life, just like you were talking about with your girls and with
Mhm.
anyone who has kids. We try to control their choices so they don't experience fear, or something that doesn't
Yes.
feel good. But really, if you want to look at the depth of that, is when we try to control other people, whether they're kids, spouses, friends, business partner, whatever the hell it is, doesn't really matter. When we try to control other things, what we truly are saying is we don't want them to do something that's going to trigger our imbalance of fear. So
That is beautiful. Just let's get in the still point with just reflecting on that because that's it.
it is.
It's something with yourself. And it seems like it's so external. Like that person is doing this to me. But that person, if you are lucky enough to have that really bold person in your life,
Yeah.
they're just holding that mirror super close to your face.
Yeah.
And when we can see that, oh boy, what a blessing it is.
It
Because
totally
then we
is.
have to look, we have to shine the light.
Hey, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. So if there's a lot of you out there that are bright lights, that are able to find more love and see both energies and they're choosing to find the love or create the love versus create the fear because they know they can do both. These are the people that sometimes trigger other people just by being in their presence. It's not always what we do, because when you're this brighter light, which is more balanced and we're choosing love in this conscious creation, it's going to shine a brighter light on them. And then
Yeah.
they may get triggered because they're like, I'm not that happy, I'm not that great, because the brighter the light, the darker the fear. It's going to create that deepness to it. And a lot of times that can really push people away. So I'm seeing a lot of people in this field as they're becoming more balanced. What they're finding is a lot of relationships are ending.
Yes, and if there's a divide that once existed in your relationship and you were very different and on different paths, I see it as almost like if you're shining your light of awareness, you're moving up out of a ditch almost, right? But that other
Mm.
person, if they're not, they're going down and they're burying themselves under more and more
And
fear,
they're
right?
pulling you down with them.
And
Misery
they're
loves
trying to
company.
pull. Completely. So if you are feeling that, which I know so many people are right now, it's just a sign that nothing is wrong with you. You're on your true path. Don't let that pull you down anymore. Now's the time not to stay. Not that there ever was a time, but with the awareness we have now, it's a time to move out of this feeling that you're trapped.
Yeah. We create everyone in our existence. From a
Yeah.
quantum perspective, it's first of all, it's all holographic. That's already been determined. So everyone that we create in our life, that whether it's in a brief second, you see them in a store, or you drive by them, you never see this person again. It's usually the people that we consistently recreate or that we keep in our life, family and relationships, that are the deeper reflection, is that we are creating this person to show us our imbalance.
Yes.
That should be a marriage vow. If anything, if you're going to have a
Oh,
vow in a relationship,
yes. One that really matters, that would
yes.
be. Oh
So
my
when these people in your life that you're starting to find more balance and they're not, and they're trying to pull you back, they are trying to control you from becoming brighter because it makes their shit look deeper and darker. So they don't want to see it. It's the same energy with what control is. It doesn't matter why you're trying to control another person. It's always because there's something within you that you don't want to see that this person is reflecting. So if we
yes.
can learn from that and not take it personally, no one's doing anything to you. You are creating everything in your existence. It's
Yes.
that deeper energy that we were just mentioning before. There's a shot or a part of the movie from The Matrix, which, God, if anyone hasn't seen The Matrix, you need to watch it about a dozen damn times.
Yeah.
There's so much truth in that movie. It's just fascinating to me. Was the experience when Neo went to see the Oracle, and he was asking, I think, why is this happening to me, or why am, what is this all about? And she was like, you already chose to create this.
Mhm.
That was your free will, technically, if you want to talk about the definition of free will. So our free will is to create an existence that once we incarnate in, we no longer remember why we created it. So it's not to like, why is something happening to me? That's a victim mentality. It would be
Yes.
more, why would my soul choose to create this experience?
Yes.
What is there to learn from this? What kind of fear can we see, or find love in the face of that fear that's going to create the balance? So it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. We're not here just to react to what's happening to us or put a band-aid on it. Just ignore it, or do something, or even take a pill that changes whatever this is that you're feeling and experiencing. It's more about being able to find that balance and that, hey, I created this for a reason, so it's not this
Yes.
person outside of me that's the problem. you know if we do that, you're never going to resolve this, because you will eternally
No.
blame other people for them doing things that you don't like to do.
Well, I was sharing this example earlier with someone. It's like if someone has trust issues, they're always going to hold belief that they're going to be in situations that are untrustworthy. They're just going to create that. But if we have the belief, to your point, and what that movie portrays is that everything's always working out for us,
Yeah.
right? And so in that moment, if you can get still enough when the control is setting in, like you really want to grasp, you want to attach to some form of control, in that moment, if you can simply pause and ask that question, why would I create a situation
Yes.
like this? Why? Because that's your gold.
Yep.
If you can shine light on that, your whole life's going to open up and then
Yeah.
you're empowered to move
Totally.
in this whole new direction.
Yep. And we are not here to release or eliminate fear. We always want fear to be a choice, because
Yeah.
that's kind of like an indication. Like, so many people always want signs, always want signs that show me what I need to do. I'm like, what don't you like about your life? That's your sign. It's
Yeah.
it's not going to be some angelic thing that's going to land on your porch and tell you what
No.
you need to do. I mean, it'd be nice, But that'd be like someone just coming up and giving you the answers to the test. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of what we're here for.
Completely.
So it's
Yeah,
really kind
it's
of fun
so
to dig into this.
exciting. I mean, I just felt a pure activation in that whole, it was like a breakthrough
Yeah.
energetically. For anyone that feels that in their heart right now, my heart just feels like, I don't know, I felt that shift because that's
Yeah.
really what life is all about. How can we, whether it's the silver lining, whatever it is, just seeing the real beauty of a situation.
And that's what our emotions do. That's the whole head heart connection that a lot of times I don't see that's fully understood or integrated to where those dots are connecting. Like, what's this head heart thing that people talk about with spirituality? The head is the limitations of our programs. It only knows what it knows. But the details can be endless as we can see it. That would be more of your quantitative, perspective. No, yeah, quantitative. It could be multiple different things. Emotions are qualitative. It's love or fear. It's just your body telling you in an emotional way what it is, the program that you're experiencing. Is it imbalanced? And that's where we want to find out what that is. So if people that want to just play with the love and light, if you want to really dive deep, is when you're in this loving experience and I'm going to choose something that feels good. Contemplate too, what other choices could I make that may not feel so good? Not that you're going to create them. And don't
Mhm.
get hung up in that whole process that, oh my God, a thought popped in my head and it's not a loving thought, so I need to cancel, clear, delete this thing.
Yeah.
That's avoidance, people. That's a
Yes.
fear of fear. You know what I mean? Because we're not in control of our thoughts. That's the beauty. Thank God we're not in control of our thoughts because we don't have to take ownership of them. Thoughts are one of the ways that our unconscious is showing us consciously where the imbalance lies. Emotions are the other key part. If something doesn't feel good, then you're running a program that's in balance that's more fear than love, is the simplicity of
Mhm.
an emotion. But yet our society, when it comes to emotions we don't want to fear or feel, that's funny.
That is
what,
funny.
what do they end up doing? Is they go to a doctor and they give them a pill that just mutes down their emotional abilities. Is all that it's doing. Now granted, I understand if in extreme situations that may be short term needed, but there's so many other challenges with drugs and psychoactive drugs that are altering an imbalance or creating an imbalance in your hormones. So then the challenge with medication when it does that, and the doctors will tell you, if you start taking this, you're going to have to take this for the rest of your life. That doesn't seem very unconditional, does it? I mean, what the
I
hell?
just
I
have
mean,
to laugh because when you're on the other side of that, it's like, oh my God, like what a
yeah.
statement.
Oh, yeah, sign me up. Does my insurance cover it? Is it just a
Yeah.
$5 copay? Yeah, sign me up. I wish that in one way or another that we had to truly see if we had to pay for how much these insurance companies are paying for these meds and we had to pay that shit out of pocket, we would look at things very differently. We would want to find resolution a hell of a lot quicker because money seems to make
It is.
people move in different ways.
It would be a blessing. I was thinking that yesterday, just noticing how if copays weren't even available, and if it was like really difficult,
Yeah,
the whole world would change in an instant because all of these things that there's a medication for, there's a natural plant base. For instance, so many people have rashes right now, and they're all asking, like, on this one forum, I got a steroid for it. It seems to be making it worse. And coconut oil is like the best thing you can just put on a rash, right?
yeah,
You're not gonna add all this toxin to your skin, which is your largest organ, that's gonna go in and affect your other organs.
yeah.
It's just thank God I have that awareness now because I mean, I used to just follow the doctor's orders too in the past. You thought you were getting good advice, but when we know everything's out there in a pure form, maybe
Well,
that relates to love some, you
yeah,
know?
nature is balance. You know what I mean? A squirrel
Yeah.
wakes up each day, and I mean, granted, they bury a lot of nuts because they're storing them for the winter, but hell, they can never find them because they don't remember where the hell they buried them. But there's an intention there of like lack in a
Yeah.
way. Like most animals, they wake up each day and they're just like find food and water and shelter. It keeps it
Yeah.
simple in a way. So nature does provide that balance, and most pharmaceuticals come from finding a compound in nature and a plant that
True.
now they chemically reproduce.
Yes. And that's where the problem comes.
because of
In
the
the
energy.
chemistry. Yeah.
Go ahead. I know what you were going to
Yeah,
say.
in
I'm
the,
going to
in
interrupt.
the attempt to reproduce something which is much better in its natural form.
Yep.
You add the preservatives and all these things, that are what create the problem. And I even was brought to the awareness the other day of some animals that survive in the winter, even,
Yeah.
like their bodies are equipped to handle really harsh situations. Yeah, nature just, it's so beautiful what
Ooh.
it shows us.
Because there's some animals, that hibernate.
Right.
When it's
They were
too
just
cold,
talking about that. Yeah.
they shut their bodies down to be able to get through this environmental challenge that they really have nothing to control over. Bears
Exactly.
can't create fire. If they could,
Yes.
they wouldn't hibernate.
Yes.
So if we look at hibernation as a part of nature, to me, there's a lot of people going through hibernation cycles, cocoon phases, apathy stages, to where we just don't want to do anything. Now, the
Yes.
beauty of that apathy or cocoon, the beauty, because the challenging side is it feels like total shit.
Yeah, it does.
It's just
It's not fun.
so the purpose of that hibernation or cocoon phase is the purpose of not wanting to do anything is to realize that our actions create karma too.
Hmm.
Because any choice that you make, even if I'm going to choose love in the face of fear, and that's fine, you're choosing a loving experience, it's creating an imbalance, which is fine, which is probably the balance to another experience that you had that would be more fear than love.
Hmm.
So it's interesting with actions, when choice is what we do. That's why I feel like when people are just when we're in this hibernation cycle, it's really shutting us down from doing anything. Because
Yes.
when we don't do or we isolate ourselves from other people, that's another big way of cocooning, is I just don't want to go out. I don't want to leave the house. I have no idea why. I just don't want to leave. View that as a blessing because it's your body trying to slow you down to prevent you from just reacting to things so you can go deeper within. And it's also the four cycles of, like, if you look at Native American, the four directions. The north, east, south, and the west. They're all different colors, if I remember this correctly. I believe the north is black. The east would be yellow. The south is red, and west is white. I always get confused with west and north, whether it's white, black, or
Okay.
black, white.
Yeah, I don't remember the colors.
But that's a cycle of nature, and it's the whole purpose of what we do on a yearly basis as a human. If you're following that experience, is
Okay.
you have that cycle where the east is the spring. It's where things start to grow. It's where we plant our seeds of what it is that we want to experience. The summer brings in the sun, brings in the energy of that to be able to grow and to flourish that which you have planted. The west would be the winter where we harvest that, for
Yes.
our consumption, or whether or not we're energetically creating things and how we reap the benefits of that. And then the winter is where you go within. So it's a perfect time of the year with hibernation is a reflection that that's what nature does on a simple level. We as humans are more complicated. We
Yes.
could create that whole cycle within a day. Each sleep could be the north. When we wake up, it's the east, and throughout the course of the day, it's the south. And as it starts to get to dusk, that's the winter showing us that the darkness is coming. Darkness just from a sun perspective. So, but it's also digs us a little bit deeper into what is the purpose of that hibernation cycle. Is
Yes.
to really look at what choices you're making, look at what feels bad in your life, and try to find the purpose of that. It comes back to that lesson. It's like we've already created this. We don't need to know why it's here. We want to know why the hell would a soul outside of the body create this scenario so we can see the balance in it. And if it's find love in the face of fear, then most of our unconscious programs pre-age 5 are going to be imbalanced with more fear than love, which means they don't feel good versus
Hmm.
feeling good. This is why a lot of babies and infants are constantly upset. Granted, it could be what they're eating. They may not be in hell. They may be cold. They may
Yeah.
be wet. But in a deeper sense, it's just how their biological body is reacting to all this input and stimulation.
Hmm. That's interesting because I'm in a lot of wellness groups and they were talking about a baby and they went to this holistic doctor and he knew intuitively how to help the gassiness and stuff. But to your
Hmm.
point, just that influx of all of that and seeing the seasons and the equilibrium that's necessary. I mean, I know for myself, I used to be, maybe it's just because I'm older now, but like I used to be more of an extrovert. Now I like, especially, and even in Florida, it's warm at night, but I still like to be home at 5, and I don't want to go out at night. Like I
Sure.
like to just turn my Christmas lights on and be at home. But like all of this just really, it's just bringing up a lot for me to,
Yeah.
the head, the heart thing. Because the head can say, oh my gosh, you should be out doing more, all these things. But and then we also don't want to go too much into the heart, maybe sometimes. So, like, how do we really get into the balance? Like, what is that head heart connection that someone can say, yes, my compass is at true north now?
That's a great question. Is when you identify something that doesn't feel good, a
Yes.
fear, is the way that I see this, and this came from, I think, Matt Kahn. He was an
I
amazing
like him.
individual. He's
He's
got a
great.
lot of really cool, he's been around. I mean, he helped me get me through my divorce like 15, 20 years ago, whatever the hell it was.
Phenomenal. Yes.
And the best thing I loved about him, he goes, if you view your fear as your 3-year-old self that's in pain,
Okay.
how do you deal with that scenario?
Mm-hmm.
You're usually, if you're a semi-balanced individual or human, you're not going to just ignore your 3-year-old self, or like, would you ignore your 3-year-old child that's screaming and it's in pain?
Right.
You just don't walk away from it. You want to nurture it. You want to try to
Yes.
find out what that pain is caused and how you could find a balance with that. So whenever fear comes up, things that don't feel good, I always like to view it. And first of all, I'm always thankful for it.
Yes.
Now, me being thankful for my fear does not mean that, oh my God, I'm going to create more fear to be thankful for.
No.
If you're viewing it from a different perspective, because the more fear that comes up, the more that's your unconscious trying to show you that there's something that's imbalanced. So treat it
Mm.
like you would a 3-year-old child. Take it back, that feeling that you have, take it back to your childhood, earliest that you can remember, that resonates with that same emotion. Because it's usually the same program that was in there at that earlier age that was being exhibited, and experienced and felt in that moment. So view that as, sorry, my foot just popped in there. View that as view that as your own childhood self that's in pain, because that's probably where it came in, is pre-5.
Yeah.
But you've got to pull the emotion out. Not pull the emotion out. You want to separate yourself from the body that's experiencing this emotion and realize from a soul perspective that we are in that balanced state. All of our incarnations, through all the choices and actions that we make, will eventually create balance. And that way the soul can then be balanced through all of its
Mhm.
unique experiences. So that's the challenge, is in those moments, is to try to separate yourself from that emotion, not take the emotion personally.
So when we're in a situation that is not fearful, for instance, I had a woman today in one of my groups say she's in a relationship. She doesn't know if she's settling. She feels that maybe he even questions sometimes if she's the right one for her, for him. And so but she also doesn't want to regret leaving, right? And she said, in the past, I kind of went for a guy that, my heart was maybe more into.
Hmm.
But this time I want to be more analytical in making my decision. I started to see the imbalances, right? Because I
Head
could
heart.
see she's even stating she wants to get more into her head about the decision. So in those situations, how do we know where the equilibrium is?
Damn, that's a good question. I always like to say, if you have to question whether or not you're in love with a person, you're not.
Yeah.
Because those moments where we get that heart connection and it just feels amazing and magical.
Yes.
And now most people wouldn't stop and question that. Like, wait, 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 wait. I got to stop and realize why I'm feeling so good. If someone ever does that, it's just because they're worried that the other shoe's going to drop eventually and they're not going to feel this emotion. So they're trying to control and keep that emotion present. If every moment of every day was blissful, it would probably get a little boring here on Earth. I hate to
Yes.
say that.
It would. That
Um,
absolutely would.
and that's part of the experience that we're in. So if you're in this relationship or it's with a job or whatever, and your heart's not in it all the time, it doesn't mean that, oh my God, I need to run from this. It's, remember, you created this relation to show you where the imbalance lies. So
Hmm.
if you're starting to feel the imbalance and not the bliss and the love, that's what the whole relationship is really trying to show you on a deeper scale. But the challenging part is when the emotions come in and then interrupt that, because I'm not feeling this loving experience. This must not be the right person. And to me, it's more, well, there's something to learn from this experience. And if you can communicate effectively with your partner or with whoever this other person is, or that you're playing with, communication is key. Because think about communication. The throat is the main bottleneck between the head and the heart. So even from an energetic perspective, nature is showing you where the magic lies: communication. Whether it's communication with yourself or communication with others, to where you can communicate in a way that you're not, even if you get triggered, that you're not blaming the other person for this. And
Yeah.
that's when you can take ownership for how you are feeling that you don't like about this person, and you can share that with the person and not say that you're the issue, you're the problem, you need to change, which means I'm trying to control you so you don't trigger me. You know,
Yeah.
that's the deeper energy to where we find resolution is communication. And sometimes communication isn't always verbal, just like what we see isn't always visual. In our mind's eye,
Mhm.
we're not using our eyes when we have these close your eyes and you imagine things, or even dream states. So it's about re-looking at things in a different context and seeing the bigger picture with this. But communication is where it's at. Take ownership. I'm not feeling good about this, and I realize I'm creating you to reflect this. So where can we find a middle ground? And what about me don't you like? And then you can use each other to bounce this off, almost like a therapy session. But to me, it's not therapy. You're just trying to find out where the imbalances lie.
It's beautiful. I mean, I love situations. I know with all my girls, whenever I'm in a situation like that, I easily talk to them about it. We talk through it, right? And it's the next steps are revealed. There are also times in your life, though, where you can't communicate with someone like that. They're resistant, they're more in control, they're
Yep.
not open to it, right?
Yep.
So, in those situations, really just follow that internal peace. I had to work with a woman recently who she's now divorced, and she says, I'm so at peace now when I'm home alone, right? She's on the other side of this relationship that was turbulent for years. And it may just be follow that internal peace for a little bit. That equilibrium in your body. There's not any grasping, it just feels good to you. And it's sometimes just baby steps in that direction. And then it becomes very clear to you, you made the right decision.
It is easier to find your fears when you're in a more loving state, for
Yes.
sure, because the emotions aren't putting or triggering you into potential fight or flight situations. But so when fear does come up, that's why we want to pull back from those emotions and realize that this is just your body, your heart's way of showing you that there's an imbalance, and not
Mhm.
taking it personally or projecting it onto another person. And then that's where you can like sit with that feeling, but not like, we don't want to be drowned by that feeling. We want to be in that space of realizing, where did this emotion come from? And how does this relate to my parents? How does this relate to my family? How does this relate to
Yeah.
my childhood, my upbringing? Because that's when you can start to see the patterning of why things happen. And then once you can consciously see why it's happening, then the bigger energetic challenge would be, how can you shift the programs and release the traumas from the body?
Let's go there a little. Yeah, I think
That's the
we'll
theta brain.
kind of end today with more of a healing to release some of that. What is underneath all of this, right? So we're going to
Yep.
start digging a little to realize, first of all, a lot of what we talked about is that there's a level of predetermination. Your soul chose to have these experiences prior to incarnation. So you're really just kind of here to see that you're on some sort of journey that's for you, working out for you. So, how can you take those pauses throughout and just see things as they are with a little bit more love in those moments of fear to move through them, more not reactionary, but in balance with the head and the heart.
Yeah.
And so now, how do we dig a little deeper to just get clear on what's really underneath this, or anything that's a little bit more that can help? in these
It's
situations?
going to be simple because if the majority of our programs are in place by the age of 5, they're not going to be complex. The
True.
brain and the experiences from that infant body at that stage is simple, and I think a lot of times it's our adult brain that creates the complications, thinking that these programs, if you're not even aware that the programs are there, first of all, that's the first part, communication. Learn a little bit more. Communication is also learning, is when you are alone and you talk with yourself. And if, hey, listen, I highly recommend talking out loud, like physically talking to yourself if you have an issue, because there is a different way that the unconscious is receiving that information than if you're just internal dialogue talking. When
Yes.
you speak out loud, then it's being heard through the ears and going. There's a time delay, even if it's
Mhm.
nanoseconds. There's a little bit of a delay that allows the unconscious to really kind of show you again. Here's another way of looking at it. Here's another example of that.
Okay.
So I believe, I mean, now this is something you may not want to do all the time is talk out loud. You can if you want, and you'll get your clarity and you'll probably be also get a lot more isolation because most people, we've all been
What
told,
happened
oh,
to
they're
them?
crazy. Yeah, they're crazy. They're talking to themselves. It's like, shit, we talk to ourselves all day long. We just don't
We do.
vocalize it.
We don't
So
vote.
making that choice doesn't make it insane. It actually probably makes it more sane. We're
Yeah.
starting to see that all the crazy people growing up that we looked at that, oh my God, that person is just living out in the woods by themselves. They don't have an iPhone, they don't have this, they don't have that. Oh my God, I'd never want to be that. And now we're starting to see a lot of people as they get older. It's like that dude had it right. Like I want to create a simpler life. Because the more that we gather and the more that we think we need outside that we truly don't need to survive, we just want it, it's just going to
Mhm.
create more distractions.
Yeah, it's so simple when it boils down to it, It's the simple life is what we're creating here. We're coming
Yeah,
back full circle to who we were before birth and all of the need for anything external. When we were in that womb, it was our basic needs.
yeah,
You know, um, it's pretty crazy when you think about it, how quickly that environment changes for a young child. And so I know for myself too, I didn't know until after my mom had passed that she really struggled with her weight when she was pregnant with me. And
mm,
I was her first child. My brother, even more so. She only gained like 5 pounds when she was pregnant with him, right?
okay,
So, like, it was crazy. Like, I don't even know because he was, I think, 7. So he must have, but he was even like pulling from her. Like, she was throwing up the whole time. Like, so you're going to have this like abandonment almost wound,
hmm,
or I'm not worthy of taking up space in your body, right? That
yeah,
I now luckily am aware of. If I had that wound, that's where it came from. My mom just wasn't even aware of it. It's not that it was intentional, but that was something that was shared with me in the womb.
yeah.
So, that's where these things get instilled.
And it's in the DNA. And then, of course, the choices that are happening after you're born and what you experience are going to be reflections of that. And then that becomes what you believe to be your truth. But then we also have that whole genetic component that we get so much more from our parents than just our biological features. We get traumas from them. it's
Yeah.
it's almost like an evolutionary period, to you look at the birds where the beaks grow longer because they need to get deeper into the ground or into a tree to gather food. We say, oh, that's a positive evolution, but from the human experience, man, we get their traumas because in their mind and in their DNA, this traumatic experience is so great that we want to try to prevent anyone from experiencing that, so it highlights the trauma, which then means we come in born with a program, that's going to create the trauma. So it's
Yeah.
actually it's like ass backwards. By holding on to something isn't going to allow you to learn how or not to do it. We need to let things go so we can see another perspective. So a lot of our programs are genetic in nature, and some of them would be, I would say, amplified, based on our current experiences in this body versus other potential incarnations where it may be deeper reflected. So when you ask the question is, how do we go deeper into this? How can we really start? Because sometimes it's challenging. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's so much going on. Where do I start? I would recommend it. Look at the situation that has been the most repeated in your life.
Okay.
Because if you have a situation, because remember, we have a lot of unconscious programs that are imbalanced. We can't create all of them at once. We would never get out of bed. You know, we would be crippled in an emotional state and from a fight or flight state. So if you look at the patterns that are more consistently repeated, it's showing you that that's probably the program that wants to be balanced the most, because it's
Mhm.
always creating this scenario to get your attention. You know, whether it's abandonment, whether it's codependency, whether it's abuse, you know, all these different things. So the one that gets repeated the most is the one that would probably be the most bang for your buck, so to speak, that if you're able to resolve what program it is that keeps repeating itself more frequently, then you can start to see what else is in there. So that would be the biggest one that I would look at first, is what's the most repeated pattern that you have in your existence.
It's beautiful. It just shows you exactly where you need to go and just
Yeah.
bring more love. Like when I did a healing for myself, my mom was an amazing mom. Like I brought her so much love. Like she had that in the womb too, I feel. Like it was just something she wasn't able to consciously work with. But there was so much love and compassion in the healing of that. So whatever it is that you're noticing in your life, and even if you're 20 years in with this pattern that you're aware of and you're beating yourself up over it, there's divine timing in resolving it. Those 20 years, if you were with a person, say, that person was your greatest teacher during that time, helping you to evolve exactly to where you are so that you can heal this, And so everything's divine in a
Yeah.
sense. And when we can just show up with love, another thing, I think it was either Matt Kahn or Ram Dass, like how would love respond,
Yeah.
or being a loving rock to something or someone. It's just helped me so much to realize that's really all it takes.
It is. It is a simple process. Now, most people can show it for other people easily, but
Yeah.
for themselves, they can't.
No, and so it was really helpful in times in my life where my mom's voice came through, where I know it was my higher self giving me that guidance, but
Hmm.
I heard it from somebody else, right? And so, yeah, if and even if you work with your inner child, go back to the 5-year-old version of yourself and reparent that child.
Yeah.
That you're working with yourself still, but it's so much easier to come back to self-love through those gradual steps.
Yep. Find the lesson, and the lesson's going to be, what's the beautiful thing that this created? What was its purpose? You know, you already know the fearful thing. That's the reason why you're looking at
Yes.
it. But what would be the beautiful experience? What has this taught you? You know,
Yeah.
even if what you've taught is, if you had a challenging childhood with abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, or sexual, whatever it is, now, granted, certain ones can create deeper senses, of that fear for sure. But when you take a deeper look at that, it's, even if you've had a horrible childhood, if you knew nothing else, the only thing I learned from that whole childhood was how not to treat a person. That is still a beautiful lesson. And unfortunately, there are some people that were never, and that's okay, that they're not being able to see the bigger picture with this, and they react to everything. They think everything is happening to them. They think there's some dude sitting on a throne with a beard that's throwing shit at them to challenge them.
Yeah.
That's really not the case in a predetermined existence. You're the dude on the throne that's throwing shit at you. There's not something outside of you. That's more codependent. So when we look deeper at that, is we can just see the simplicity of it,
Yeah.
then we can start to resolve it and let it go. But the ones that are repeated the most also have the most layered trauma, because each repeated event adds another layer of trauma to the physical body.
Yeah.
So we don't just want to release all of the trauma, because then the person may not truly understand why it happened. So if you can understand the lesson, see both sides of what happened to me, and how did this serve me in a way that has allowed me to find more balance in my life, it can be released a lot simpler and easier. And if you do it when you're in a dominant theta brainwave, binaural beats, stereo headphones, listen to it, think about your childhood, imagine understanding the lesson, letting go of it, thanking it for what it served, it's going to release. It's just, I've seen it for 9 years. I can't dispute it anymore. My male brain wants to at times, but
It's so beautiful. And just for anyone out there that's struggling with something, Fred and I were talking this week about bringing an offering to you where we're going to work together. And if if you're having a hard time uncovering what really is the root cause, I think this offering is going to just be so beautiful as we evolve this, because with Fred's specialties in reading chirology in the hands and all, yeah, there's so many clues in the hands.
yeah,
And I just feel I'm a spiritual detective when I go in there and kind of figure out what's really beyond, the symptoms and different health problems. And we're going to bring it all together in service to you identifying that
absolutely.
root. And I can't think of anything more exciting than that, because
It's powerful.
it'll heal at the level of cause.
It is so true because we both focus on the same things. Now, granted, we may have different ways that we do it, but it
Yeah.
always leads us to the same point. And when you have, cause say, sometimes it takes a village, man. It's just that simple. Things are not silos in this existence. They may appear
No.
silos, but when you start digging deeper into what that silo is connected with, think of a tree. You don't see the roots, but that's where all the magic is happening as the trees are communicating, in addition to how things go through the air. That's a different thing, but the majority of the communication is in the root system. So
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a community, it takes a village to be able to break it down and look at it. And the thing I love about how we interact is there's a beautiful balance between masculine and feminine.
Yes.
And that's what brings in the bigger picture of both sides as well.
Yeah, just noticing those things that maybe you're not able to notice for yourself, and really healing and living your best life. That's what we're here to do now. And life doesn't have to be scary at this point.
Yeah.
So, we're coming up on a holiday season. I just hope that everyone can realize it truly is a magical time
This is the
to be
winter
alive.
time. This is the time to go within,
It
you know?
really is.
And that's where the winter, because it shelters you. You need to remove yourself from the elements as much because it may not be as environmentally comfortable when you go out. Even
Right.
though there is beauty in nature, don't get me wrong, there needs to be a balance with that too. We just don't want to isolate ourselves for 3 months and then be outside all summer. There should be a balance within that too. And
Yes.
that's what that self-reflection, that's why meditating on a daily basis can help, is it allows you to self-reflect on what's going on that day or what happened the previous day, or if you start to see those bigger repeated patterns. And that's what we can
Yes.
help do tremendously is by we have two different perspectives that we can see things, but it's a really beautiful way that the synergy between it flows incredibly well.
It does. I'm so excited about it. So, as we wrap up today, what's coming to mind, Fred, to just offer as a
I would say
healing?
the biggest thing that we can do, because and without getting into the details of specific programs, is the emotional side, the feeling side, because all emotions in the body are chemical reactions. So
Hmm.
we have receptors on our cells that help us identify what these emotions are.
Hmm.
Most people, if they're having challenges finding out where their imbalances lie, is there may be a simple little thing that we can do is just to download to every cell in your body so your body knows that it's safe to be
Safety.
able to experience fear because
Yes.
you are creating it for a reason. And it's not to make you more introverted, it's not to make you more controlling. Is we want to see fear for what it reflects. So if we can truly feel safe in the presence of fear without taking it personally or projecting it, that
Yes.
that almost has to be there on a foundational level to really be able to dive deep into what's going on.
Well, and that's what's going to be the container in anything that we offer. It's that sacred container, that place of safety, that holding space to be all of you
Yeah,
without any grasping or reaching, just because that's where the magic happens.
absolutely. So it's and also to know that you're safe to be able to interact with people on that level that have that capacity to be able to help you. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong because the hardest person to work on is yourself.
Yeah.
Because you have the whole conscious thinking differently of what the unconscious is, where a person that's outside and not experiencing your emotions and is not necessarily trapped in cycles, it's blatantly obvious at times to see. It really is so obvious and so simple when you're not in that emotional throw and you don't have the repeated history of it. But there are times, like I have sessions, I know you have sessions, where what a person is experiencing triggers you,
Yes.
and that's the other thing I love about what we do is sometimes the best way for me to find out my imbalances are through helping other people because I'm creating that person to show
You
me
are.
something as well.
Yes.
Even if it isn't tense, I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I had a
Yes.
session with a person, the first time it's ever happened in 9 years. I had to go throw up in the middle of a session, watching a person witnessing their healing, witnessing their soul healing their existence. It was a deep trigger for, and that blew my mind. And I'm like, I got something I want to look at now that I didn't even know was in there. And
Yes.
that has never happened. But thank God there's a mute button on the phone. That's all I have to say because that's
I've been experienced some of those things too, and
yes,
it's so beautiful because you feel it on a physical level. I mean, you're really purging. And
yeah,
I think it's just going to get a little bit more intense for us.
oh yeah,
We can compare notes every week, you and I see how much deeper we're going with this to
yep.
that physical level. And you think about the levels of the body and all of the, yeah, it's no joke. So,
It really is. And the intensity of the energy of what the sun's putting out, in addition to what's going
yes,
on universally that impacts the sun, that impacts our planets, that impacts us, that's the light. It's a physical light that we see from the sun. So it's a good analogy, because when the sun isn't present, then we don't have that light and we're in that darker space, so to speak. It's just the absence of the light, but it doesn't mean the love isn't present. It's just the 3D reflection of light and dark on a daily basis that we're constantly seeing.
yeah, just like the sun's still there at night,
It's still
it's
there.
just, not present. So
Yeah.
let's download then that just like a computer would upgrade with a new program, we're going to download a program that you are safe. You are safe to be you. And that is just going to be part of your foundation.
Absolutely. And that when you see the fear, when the fear comes up, not take it personally, not project it, own it. You're creating it.
Yes.
Your body is trying to get your attention. And if you don't listen to it eventually, and this isn't a fear mongering thing, it's just how it tends to flow. If the repeated cycles keep coming and the fear keeps getting louder and louder and louder, and we keep pushing it away, pushing it away, pushing it away, it's going to create something physical in the issue as a disease or a disorder. And that's
Yeah.
usually when people will stop and start to reflect, oh God, there's something wrong because now my physical body is showing me something.
Okay. Yeah.
So we don't
Okay.
want to get to that point. We don't need to get to that point. But if you're
Yeah.
in that space, that's fine too. Every
That's
program
fine as
creates a
well.
disease. So every disease is created by a program. And that's the whole other thing that we have the capacity to dig in deeper to is when it comes to certain diseases as to what is the root cause that this disease is showing you.
Mhm. Beautiful.
All right, let's play. Let's just get into that beautiful meditative state. If you want to, it doesn't need to happen. That's the beautiful thing I love about what we do is just listening to this. You may have already been feeling the shifts of this, and this is just the conscious recognition of what's already been happening. So know you're safe to be able to release this and also be able to bring in these beautiful things to know that fear is your friend. It is really not something to be run from.
What did you see?
That was fascinating. I always see weird shit. It like it does.
Well, mine was quick, so I was able to see you were processing a lot.
The first thing I was kind of seeing was like a room full of crying babies, and I'm just like, I want to run from this. It's like my first instinct was
Yes,
like, oh my
resistance.
god. So it was kind of cool to see that, but then it was like as I was just kind of like witnessing that, like, hey, it's okay to feel fear. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just a reflection. It's thank God that we do, or else we would never really have an external indicator or an emotional indicator to show us where this balance lies. So then eventually, like once this energy started to flow in, then like all the babies just started to stop crying. And then they started to
Wow.
coo and get, make their little noises, all the cute things that we love about babies. Um, and then another weird thing popped up and literally popped up. It was just like this picture of like people that have wood floors or something, and a nail would pop out of the floor. And so it sticks this
Mm.
far out, and then you kick it, you cut your foot on it, you trip on it. And I saw two different ways to approach this. What most people would tend to do, because this is just like a fear trying to get your attention, is I saw people putting like caution tape around this little section on the floor
Oh,
so they could visually see it so they would know to avoid it.
yes.
Versus what we want to do is we want to find out, why to pop it, or we want to bring it back into balance so we could just hammer it in, and then it's resolved in a different way versus the avoidance of the silliness of putting caution tape in the middle of your kitchen floor. But it was just like what people tend to do is the caution tape is they avoid it. They don't want to deal with it. So it's easier for them just to work around it versus take a deeper look at it. So
Michael
that's
Singer
what I'm
has
saying.
a book, The Untethered Soul, and he calls that the thorn, just
Okay.
pull the thorn out kind of mentality. Don't spend your whole life wearing certain clothes so that it doesn't rub against the thorn, right? So beautiful. And that you can just look at things in your life where you've just been delaying, maybe leaving a relationship or a job or something. That's the thorn. And
Yes.
so what I saw was us just all in this group healing as well, where we were all gifted this really soft, like plush chair to
Mm,
just sit in to experience the healing and how quickly we all experienced it because we had the comfort and the security of knowing we were safe. So it's really like 50% of the healing is knowing you are safe.
yeah.
That's where you create that foundation for your self healing to take place. And I know that's what you and I just love to offer people is that safety so
It
that
truly
those
is.
miracles can just occur.
Absolutely. And just to let you all know that if you were even like meditating during that time, not everyone's going to visually see things. Because when I first started this, and I really got into this 9 years ago, it took me probably about, I would say, a year or two before I started seeing things visually, intuitively. Most of
Yeah.
my initial stuff would come in like from a verbal, like I would hear things, hear statements in my mind, or I would just know it. It's like a knowing. So a lot of people get hung up on the seeing things, so I just want to let people know that if you're in that meditative state, you're not seeing things, you're not doing it wrong. It's the more that you can become comfortable with this and trust in your intuition, then it will start to show you things visually. Visual is one of our strongest senses. So
Mhm.
if you're trying to expand into and trusting your intuition, you may not see things visually because for one, you may not want to see what really isn't there. Or it's
But
just this like an evolutionary process or like learning how to ride a bike. The more that you practice and play with it, then all your clairs will come in. It would be auditory, visual, feeling, knowing, premonition, whatever it would be. Then it will start to expand.
absolutely.
So just in case,
So
I don't know why they need to share
it's
that, but
it's so important because there's many clairs
mhm.
and even for those people who want to develop the visualization, imagination is the pathway. So use your imagination. If you're seeing something you imagine, you're still seeing it. That
Yep,
visualization is your visualization. So it's really where we marry with a creative aspect of this to tune ourselves to the psychic abilities that aid us through the process.
absolutely.
So,
Let's keep it simple. Let's see where we
yes,
can go with this. And if you have interest in a dual session with us, a co-creative session, reach out and we can start to discuss the options and what that would look like and start to move forward until, and then we'll just see where it flows.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. It's been
Thank you,
fun.
everyone. Hope you have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Bye bye.